my name is Yetunde, first name Yetunde, surname Oladeji. I'm a food safety auditor and consultant. So essentially what I do is I help organizations, I train and help with documentation, NAFDAC certifications and all of that, just to ensure that the food industry, we have standards and we as employees, we are complying, okay? So essentially that is what I do. So as she explained, this is your HACCP course level. Too much with the technicals of what the HACCP is, that is level 3, that is manager level. So the level 1 and 2 is the practicality of HACCP. Essentially, how you apply HACCP every day in what you do, in whatever area, whether in the store, in the kitchen, front of house, service staff, all of that, right? But let me tell you what HACCP means. HACCP means hazard analysis, critical control point. The H is hazard, the A is analysis, the C is critical, the next C is control, the P is point, right? And essentially what it means is, so it's a system that was developed in the US, and it is a method of preventing food safety issues. Let's just put it that way, right? So HACCP was designed to prevent food safety issues, meaning it is preventive. You don't wait until somebody has food poisoning or get some kind of illness from your food before you do something. So what HACCP is saying is, you put controls in place, critical control points. You put controls in place, you take action that prevents people from getting sick from the food that we serve. That is what HACCP is. So it is preventive, not reactive. Meaning it's not when somebody is now sick, you'll not be saying, okay, let's give first aid, let's give flagyl, let's do this. No. Or let's send the person to the hospital, we'll pay the hospital bill, give the person room free to, no. HACCP is preventive. You put measures in place, you take some action in how we handle and prepare our food, such that that does not happen. Right? And the idea of HACCP is food safety. So that big word, the big acronym HACCP or ASAP or ASAP as some people call it, the idea is for food safety. So a good place to start is why food safety is important and what is food safety. Okay? So we'll learn about how food becomes unsafe and then your role in that. How we ensure that our food is safe. We would talk a bit about allergens and allergies, and then we'll talk about preventive food allergen contamination. Right? Now, so what is food safety? We said HACCP is because of food safety, right? So what is that food safety? From the word food safety, we know what food is, right? And we know what safety is. It means that food, for it to be safe. What do we mean for it to be safe? Meaning whoever consumes it, whether mother, father, tall, short, black, white, Nigerian, non-Nigerian, it is safe for them to consume. That is what food safety is. And when we talk about food, it's not just your rice, your Mexican rice, your meat, your fish. When we talk about food in the terms of food safety, it encompasses everything that goes into the mouth to give the body sustenance. So that includes what? Water, juice, our soda, Coke, Fanta, our wine, our drinks that we serve in the bar, our snacks, our pastry items. In fact, it includes medicine, your paracetamol, and anything that goes into the mouth that is supposed to give the body sustenance or is supposed to nourish the body is food. So the idea of HACCP and food safety is ensuring that anything that goes into the mouth is safe for eating. That is food safety. Okay? So and why is food safety important? But before I go there, foods are made unsafe by hazards. And we usually say that an hazard is anything that has the potential to cause harm. The hazard is not the problem. It is when it gets into the food that it becomes a problem. right? So what are these hazards? Let me explain what hazards are in a very simple and basic term. Now, if there's water here on the floor, right, we would say that that is an hazard. However, water being on the floor, it has the potential to cause harm, meaning if I slip, I could fall, right? So what then do? We'll clean it up, right? But the idea of HSP, remember I said HSP is preventive. You don't wait for things to happen. So the idea of HSP is, okay, you have water on the floor. You then have to think, how did water get on the floor? Is it coming from the AC? Is the AC leaking? Is it coming from the roof? Is the roof leaking? Or maybe somebody spilled water. Somebody was carrying water and they spilled water. So then how do you prevent that it doesn't happen? It means we ensure that we are servicing our ACs correctly, right? And we train people on safety, that if you spill something or you pour something, you don't just leave it. You clean it up so that somebody does not trip and fall over. So that is the idea of food safety. You plan ahead. You do things right to ensure that your food is safe. Am I making sense? Okay, great. So now let's talk about a little bit more about these hazards, right? But why is food safety important? Let me go back there. So in talking about hazards, we would learn about why food safety is important. In fact, from what I'm already saying, you can already understand why food safety is important, right? We'll talk about food poisoning, foodborne illness, and what causes food poisoning. And I already said those are hazards. So a good place to start to delve into is understanding what hazards are, right? So now there are 4 classes of hazards. When you're classifying hazards, or you can say 4 types of hazards. First, we have the physical hazard, we have the chemical hazard, we have the biological or the microbiological hazard, and the 4th one we have allergens. Okay? So biological hazard, chemical hazard, physical hazard, and allergens. So we explain what those are. They are things that you already know. So anything that would cause the food to become unsafe, anything that can harm somebody from the food, you can trace it to either a biological hazard, a physical hazard, a chemical hazard, or an allergen. So first, what is a biological hazard? Or let's talk about the physical hazard first. Physical means something you can see, right? With your naked eyes. That is physical. So think of things that can get into food that is not supposed to be there and that you can see. Those are physical hazards. And the most common one, who knows the most common physical hazard in the food industry?
Sponge.
What?
Iron sponge.
Iron sponge. Yes, that is quite common as well. But the most common? Hair. That is the most common. Even at home, we experience it. It is the most common physical hazard. Hair. Another example of physical hazard, metal shavings, maybe from your knife, your butchering knife, right? From iron sponge, like you mentioned. So anything that can get into food that you can see is a physical hazard. Flies, ants in food, physical hazard. What else? Can somebody give me other examples? Things that you can see or that you've seen in food before. Nylon. Maggots, thank you. Cockroach, yes. Plastic, nylon. Nails, thank you. Nails. All those are physical hazards. Okay? So, then let me talk a bit about the last one. Natural objects. Also hazard. For example, bone. So, I like to give this example. We know chicken breast, Abby, or fish fillet, right? In chicken breast, is there supposed to be bone? So if somebody orders a dish that is made with chicken breast, when the person is eating it, the person does not expect to eat bone, right? So if there's bone in that chicken breast, it is a physical hazard. Same thing for fish fillet, right? The bone is supposed to have been plucked. Chef, am I right? Absolutely. Your fish fillet should not have bone. So if there's bone in the fish fillet, it's a physical hazard. Now, I'm not talking about old fish or fish parts, maybe the tail or something that is fried. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the way the dish has been designed. It's not supposed to have bone. So psychologically, when the person is also eating, he does not expect to crunch into bone. So when you have naturally occurring objects where it is not supposed to be, it is also a physical hazard. Sometimes if you use stock to cook your, maybe meat stock to cook your jollof rice, you can find bone in it. True or false? Yes. And when you are eating rice, have you ever experienced that before? You are eating rice and you just gnash on bone. In fact, the pain will go to your brain. Am I right? Okay, so those are physical hazards. Moving on. Now, chemical hazard. Just like the name, anything of a chemical nature is not for human consumption, right? Yes. So any chemical should not be in food. An example of the common ones would be soap, right? Sanitizer. Another example, can anybody help me? Insecticide. Insecticide, thank you. What else? Bleach. Any chemical we use in the kitchen. Oven grease, right? Oven oil, our maintenance grease and oils, gas from the fridge or the freezer. All those are chemicals and should not be in food. Remember, we're talking about hazards, right? And we said that hazards are the things that causes the food to become unsafe. And we said there are 4 categories. We have physical, we have chemical, we have microbiological, and allergens. We've talked about physical, right? Now we've talked about the chemical hazards. So moving on, let's talk about the food allergens. But before I talk about allergies, let's talk about the microbiological. Or should we just follow the... Okay, let's just follow the sequence. So, in fact, not until 4 or 5 years ago, allergens were not considered a part of the hazards. So the classes of hazards used to be just 3: physical, chemical, and microbiological. But recently, because there's been a lot of deaths and illnesses associated with allergens, allergen is now regarded as an hazard. And all regulation, including NAFDAC, requires that the way you handle your allergens are very, very important. So what are these allergens? Now, unlike the physical, chemical, and microbiological hazards that they are not supposed to be in food, allergens are actually food. Allergens are food. So, the allergens are proteins that you find in the food. For example, beans. Have you ever, does anybody here have an allergy?
Yes.
Okay. Beans.
Yes.
What happens when you eat beans?
Anytime I eat beans, honestly, I gas.
You gas. Okay. Okay. I'll explain. Let me bust your bubble. So that is not actually a food allergy. I'll explain it. Does any other person have an allergy? However, what happens is the person, some people, some individuals, their body cannot tolerate that food. Now, let me use this as an example. We all know what our immune system is, Abi. Yes. Our immune system is what helps us to fight disease, right? So, if you catch malaria, your body's immunity is what helps you to suppress the malaria, right? Now, if we all go for malaria test now, what will happen? You go and do blood test. They will find malaria parasites in your blood, right? Yes. But you are not sick.
Yes.
Why is that? It is because your body's immunity, your white blood cells is fighting them. We keep fighting and suppressing them. So what happens when you get sick is, when the malaria parasites, they have now multiplied, they've grown so much that it's a battle. Your body's immunity cannot fight them anymore. That is when you start feeling cold, headache, like that. That is your body's immunity. If you've ever done malaria test, they'll say the malaria is malaria times 3, times 2, right? That is when the parasites, microbiological hazard, has multiplied in your body to the point that your body cannot fight again. That is when you now need malaria medicine to help you suppress it so that your body's immunity can keep fighting. Now, I said that to say this, that your body's immunity, when it comes to allergens or food, allergenic foods, when you eat that food, I'll use myself as an example. When I eat granuts, what happens is my body sees that granite as poison, and it will start to fight. That this granite wants to make you sick. To start fighting the granuts. So it is that result of the fight that causes me to break out. Because it is actually not poison, but my body recognizes it as it's trying to harm me. So that is what allergies are. It is not everybody. It is in your DNA. The way God created you, the way you are, your DNA. Your body cannot withstand that food. Your body recognizes that food as poison. I'm sure a lot of people here eat granuts. I'm the one that is allergic to granite. It doesn't mean granite is bad. But granite is an allergy. And then my own body cannot tolerate it. Now, it is different from food intolerance. So what the people I mentioned, for example, coconut, even though coconut is an allergy, the difference between an allergy and food intolerance is if you are allergic to something or you are allergic to a food, because it is how your body is naturally, there is no cure. You cannot stop being allergic. So it means for me, from the beginning to the end of my life, I'll continue to react to granuts. The difference between allergic reaction and food intolerance is that it is just for food intolerance, at that particular time, your body cannot digest the food. That is what it means. Let me give a typical example. For babies, what do babies eat? Breast milk or regular milk? Why? Because their digestive system is still developing. It cannot handle giving them rice, giving them heavy food. Their body cannot tolerate it. Their digestive system cannot break down the food. Because our body breaks down food and takes nutrition, right? Their body cannot break down that food. And that is why babies up to 6 months, they still keep eating liquid food and light food. From 6 months, you start introducing small light food, right? Like cereal. And even if you give them things like yam, sweet potato, what do? You mash it. In the same way as adults, right? When we grow, our body keeps changing, depending on different things, depending on the stage and the state you are in your life. So for food intolerance, I'm sure for you sometimes or some time ago, it's possible that you were eating beans and it was not doing you anything before.
Yes.
Yes. So for food intolerance, your body can outgrow it or acquire it. Meaning, it's possible that you liked a particular food before. You used to like it growing up. All of a sudden, anytime you eat that food, your stomach will just start turning. Or you start going to the toilet. And then you stop. That is food intolerance. And it's possible, maybe 5-10 years from now, you just realize you eat the same food and it doesn't do you anything. Because that is food intolerance. Food intolerance is temporary. It means that your digestive system, when you eat it, cannot just digest it. That is why the things you have like running stomach or you go to toilet, you go and stool. Because it's just upsetting your stomach. It has to do with your stomach and your digestive system. You can outgrow it, you can acquire it. So that is the difference between allergic reactions or eating and being allergic and having a food intolerance. Is that difference clear? So for allergic reaction, there is no cure and it will never stop. If you eat 1 grain of the food you are allergic to, you will get the same reaction. And for allergic reactions, the symptoms are breakouts. For example, chloroquine.
Okay.
What is the symptom of chloroquine? Is an allergy, right? Some people are allergic to it, and some people take chloroquine and they'll be fine. For those that react to chloroquine, what happens? They start itching. So things like that, breakout, itching. Some people, their allergic reaction is so terrible that they have like asthma. And for some people, if you are not careful, prophylaxis, they will not be able to breathe. And once they are not getting oxygen, they pass out. And if there is no emergency epinephrine to help them start breathing, it's bye, goodbye. So that is why allergens are very, very important to take care of. When I was speaking to our dietitian yesterday, I was told that some measures have been taken to speak with our front of house staff for them to understand allergens and be explaining, okay, are you allergic to this? So that they can tell you, okay, there's granules in this food, though. If you're allergic, don't eat it. And when I was going to eat yesterday, the waiter asked me, are you allergic to anything? I said granules. Okay, so now there are 14 major allergens, or those foods that are known as allergens all around the world that people react to, different people, depending on their genetic makeup, right? So these are the first 8, but in all there are 14. There is milk, there is tree nuts, so everything that falls in the nut category: cashew, groundnut, pistachio, almond, right? So egg is an allergen. So the way we handle eggs is very, very important. The way we store our eggs in the kitchen, it has to be stored separately. The way we store it in the fridge, the bowl, so it means the bowl you use in mixing egg, you don't use it to prepare another food. You wash it out before using it for something else, right? Then you have peanuts, you have shellfish. Now when we talk about, so all seafood is an allergen. All seafood is an allergen. So we have the fishes on one side and we have the shellfishes. So meaning your crab, your all those fish, all those seafoods that have shell, clams, all of them. So any seafood, essentially, they are all allergens. And in fact, seafood gives the worst allergic reactions. Those that are allergic to seafood is prophylaxis. They will not be able to breathe immediately. Okay, so then we have soybean, we have wheat. So wheat is actually the most common because virtually every food, there's wheat in it. I'm sure we know wheat, right? And we know what wheat is used for. It's used for making flour. So anything that has flour, bread, biscuits, anything that is made from flour, it means it is an allergen because it contains what? Wheat. Okay, then I mentioned fish. So there are 14 in all. There is celery. So all the onions and garlic you mentioned falls under that category. There's sulfur, right? Sulfur falls under that category. Because sulfur dioxide are used in a lot of spices. So sulfur is actually not a food, but is used in a lot of spices and condiments. So when you are doing your allergen mapping, looking at the allergens you have in your facility, you have to look at the spices and look at the label also. Okay? It's just that in this part of the world, those allergens are not very common, but they can be very, very severe when it happens. So that is allergens. And I'll come back to this. We've not talked about one type of hazard, which is the biological hazard. Yes, so let me go back. How did I skip that? Yes, so this is biological hazard. Now, when we talk about biological hazard or microbiological, they are simply germs. Any organism that you cannot see with your eyes. Like I mentioned, malaria parasites. Has anybody seen malaria parasite before? No. Even when you go and do the test, how do they see the parasites? They take the blood, culture it, put it under microscope to see. And then there's something, they don't actually see the parasite, but there are some threading and some, let me leave all that they look at anyways, to know that, okay, there's malaria parasites in this quantity, in this number, in the blood. So all those germs are microbiological or biological hazard. We cannot see them with the naked eye. And that makes them one of the most dangerous. So for physical hazard, if you see air in your food, you can remove it, Abi. For chemicals, sometimes you can smell it when it gets into the food. And sometimes with chemical, if chemical is in the food, it will taste different. Right? So you can still suspect that, okay, there's something wrong somewhere. But for microbiological, you will not see them, you will not smell them. Right? So that is why they are responsible for almost 100% of food poisoning or foodborne illnesses. Now, let me explain what food poisoning is, or what foodborne illness is. Now, when we say food poisoning, in the food industry, that is what is referred to. But I know in this part of the world, there's like a connotation when you say, food poisoning. It means that somebody intentionally puts maybe rat poison inside the person's food, or that, thank you. They put it in the food. They put it in the food because they want the person to die. No, that is not what, in the food industry, in the food context, that is not what food poisoning means. Food poisoning means that the food is dangerous to the person. The food is unsafe. So when somebody eats the food and gets some kind of reaction, that is what we call food poisoning. Right? And there's also, so now WHO is trying to move away from food poisoning, because of, when you say food poisoning, people immediately think, oh, it's a negative thing. Yes, it's negative, though it is, thank you, that is intentional. That is not always the case. So we are trying to call it foodborne illness, meaning an illness you get from food.
Thank you.
But when you hear foodborne illness or you hear food poisoning, it means the same thing. So, and I also want to chip in something, which is not on my slide, but I think it's important for us to know. There's also what we call food intoxication. Now, there are almost food intoxication. We have virus, we have parasite, and we have fungi. Does anybody know what a fungi is? You want to say something? Fungi that you see on your bread when it gets spoiled. That is fungi. Okay? So, moving on. We've talked about all of this. So, how do these hazards, how do they get into the food? We know about physical hazards, we know about biological hazard, we know about chemical hazard, and we know about the allergens, Abi. How does it get into the food? One, it can come from the foodstuff itself. It can come from the yam. When the yam is coming from farm, what do you find on yam? Sand, right? So it means if you don't wash your yam well after peeling, you can have sand, right? Yes, physical hazard. Sand is physical hazard, Abi. So it can come from the foodstuff itself. It can come from the animals. I already mentioned that all the seafood, they are allergens.
Yes.
So all the proteins, your catfish, your goat, your ram, your cow, all of them. Any animal that has blood, just know that the same way I mentioned earlier, still going back to that same example of malaria parasite. If you go to you are not sick, but if you go to the clinic now and they take your blood, they will find what's inside, malaria parasite, but you are not sick. The difference is they've not multiplied to the point that they will weigh you down. In the same way, all our animals that you see, the chicken, the fish, as long as they have blood and they have life, they have their own microorganisms in them, right? So they come from the foodstuff themselves, and then they come from the environment. What do we mean by the environment? From the air, from water, right? And they come from the people, meaning us, as food handlers. I mentioned that air, physical hazard, is the most common hazard, right? Where does it come from? Us. The food handlers, the food preparers, the servers, it comes from us. So that is how, those are the sources of contamination. Now, in talking about foodborne illnesses and food poisoning, allergens, and all of that, there are 3 sets of people we need to take extra care of. 3 sets of people, right? The reason is because, remember that example of immunity I gave? these three categories of people, their immunity is low. I gave the example of babies and children. That's the reason why babies and children easily catch cold. All these small illnesses, before you know what, they'll have boil. Before you know what, they have eczema. They'll start, catarrh. Any for children. That's the reason is because their immunity is low. They are still getting stronger. They are still building their immunity. So that is one category of people that we have to take extra care of. So when we are serving children, we have to take extra care of them. So any child below 2 years old, we have to take extra care of them and the kind of food we serve them, how we handle their food. For mothers here, or if you go to general hospital, for feeding children, what do they always tell you? Before you make your child's food, always wash your hands. Right? So children are very, very important. Their immunity is low. Another category of people are the elderly. People above 60. I'm sure we all have elderly ones at home. Mothers, grandmothers that are elderly. What happens to them when they start getting older? They start behaving like children. The things they were eating before, they'll not be able to eat meat. So maybe only fish now, soft food. Sometimes you might even have to mash their food for them. Because just like when they were young, they are reverting. Their immunity is now very low. Right? Now, the third category of people we have to take extra care of, the people that have their immunity compromised. They are young, they are agile, but their immunity is compromised. Meaning, because of the states or what they are going through, their immunity is low. So we call them the immunocompromised. So people that have HIV, AIDS, people that are sick generally, people that have HIV. Because what does HIV mean? AIDS mean what? Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. And what does that virus do? Because that virus, the reason why it is dangerous is because there is no big deal in AIDS. It is not a sickness. But what the virus does is it kills your white blood cells that helps you fight diseases. So what that means, somebody that has AIDS, what it means is ordinary catarrh can kill them. Yes. Because their body cannot fight. So those are people that have their immunity compromised. Those that have cancer, for example, because the chemotherapy drugs they give them, what it does is it kills all the cells of the body, because they are trying to kill the cancer cells, including, so they kill both the good and the bad cells. That's why they lose a lot of weight, lose their hair. That is what that chemical does. The chemical kills everything in hopes that, okay, when everything dies, because they still have life, they will multiply and grow new cells. So when that happens, because the chemotherapy drugs also kills their white blood cells, their immunity is very, very low. Now, another example of that is pregnant women. When women are pregnant, the immunity drops. For pregnant women, different kind of things will just be happening to them. Right? Different, it is because the immunity drops. When women are pregnant, you not just understand your body and what is going on. The appetite changes, different types of things. That's because the body is in a state where the immunity is very, very low. So those are just examples of people that fall into that third category. So I said there are 3 categories of people we have to take extra care of. So for those of us that are young and healthy and agile, there are some things we can get away with. But when we are serving children, when we are serving the elderly and sick people, we have to take extra care, right? All right, moving on. How does food become unsafe? These are just some examples, some common examples. So when we prepare food too far in advance and we store it at room temperature, right? We prepare food. You want to boil or fry chicken, and you have cleaned the chicken since morning. You left it in a bowl in the kitchen, and you left it there till night or till evening before you actually boil it. That's wrong. I'll explain why in a little bit. Okay? When we cool food improperly, we also talk about cooling, the proper way to cool food. We'll talk about it later. Now, when we warm the food, but we don't reheat it to the appropriate temperature, the use of cooked food contaminated with food poisoning bacteria, like the example I gave of the chicken, food intoxication, right? So that could also happen when we undercook our food. Now, not thawing frozen poultry for sufficient time or temperature. There are ways to thaw food, meaning defrost. If you bring food out of the freezer and it's blocked, there are ways to defrost it. If you don't follow the proper way to defrost it, the microbial load would increase, right? Then, when there is cross-contamination, when we store hot food below 60 degrees. I'll explain that temperature thing in a little bit as well. Infected food handlers, meaning for us that we prepare the food, when we transfer germs to the food, maybe from sneezing, right? Or maybe when we have cuts or injuries, that can happen. And then the use of leftovers. Okay, so now we've done a lot of preamble. We know what causes the food to become unsafe. We know about all the hazards, that when the hazard gets into the food, that is where the problem starts, right? Now, what we need to look at is how the food actually becomes unsafe. How do these hazards get into the food? The first one is time and temperature abuse, right? The second one is cross-contamination. The third is poor personal hygiene. Poor personal hygiene. The fourth one is poor cleaning and sanitizing. Now, every case of food poisoning or food intoxication, anything it is, diarrhea, when somebody gets sick from food, you can always trace it to these four things. If you investigate what went wrong, how did it happen? These are the four problems. This is where it comes from. So when we talk about hair in food, for example, right, the physical hazard, that will fall under poor personal hygiene. Maybe we're not wearing our appropriate hairnet or covering our hair properly in the kitchen, right? So all the problems, you can trace it to these four issues. And of course, when you know the problem, the solution is easy, Abi? Okay, so this is the crux of the training. So we'll talk about time and temperature abuse, cross-contamination, poor personal hygiene, and poor cleaning and sanitizing. Now let's talk about personal hygiene. What is personal hygiene? From the word personal and hygiene, meaning the person's hygiene, meaning our hygiene. Those of us that handle food, right from storage, receiving, preparing, the butchers, the people that cook it, and then to the servers. Personal hygiene, how we handle ourselves when we are preparing food. Now, poor personal hygiene is when we as food handlers, we transfer pathogens or these hazards that we mentioned, we transfer them to the food. Now, if you look at this picture, what is wrong with this picture?
It's coughing.
It's coughing. Is there anything wrong in coughing?
Bacteria.
Bacteria. There is nothing wrong in coughing, but he coughed into what? His hand, and he's wearing what? Gloves that he's using to prepare food. So you cough and then you go back and start. Bacteria. Because when we cough, when we sneeze, remember body fluids, what comes out? A lot of germs. Okay? All right, so now let's talk about cross-contamination. We know what personal hygiene means. I'm just trying to explain what the issues are. Then we'll talk about the solutions. Okay? So now, cross-contamination, number 2. What is cross-contamination? Cross-contamination is simply carrying germs or dirt from an unclean place to a clean place. Simple. Now, if we look at that picture, the first picture, what is wrong with that picture?
It's sealed.
It's sealed. Sealing is a good thing, Abby. There's blood. So this is some kind of storage, and maybe there was meat or something on the upper shelf. When they brought it out, blood dripped on. That is cross-contamination. That vegetable was clean, but now blood has dripped on it. We've carried germs from the meat onto the the lettuce or whatever that is cross-contamination. When you transfer germs or dirt from an unclean place to a clean place. Now let's look at the second picture. What is wrong with that picture? Or what do we see in that picture?
Raw protein and vegetable
on the same table. Now, don't forget that is chicken, Abi. And that is cabbage, sliced cabbage, which is ready to eat. Nobody is going to cook it. It's going into salad, right? But the blood from the chicken has definitely contaminated that cabbage. So that is cross-contamination, right? Okay, so what is the third problem we mentioned? Time and temperature abuse. Now, what is time and temperature abuse? To explain this, okay, so this says letting food stay too long at temperatures that are good for pathogen growth. Now, permit me to further explain this when we go ahead. There's a slide ahead I want to use so that we can see the illustration. So, and then the fourth problem we said was what? Poor cleaning and sanitizing. So that is very clear. When we don't clean properly or when we don't sanitize where we are supposed to sanitize, right? So we introduce hazard into our food. Now, we know what the four problems are. We said time and temperature abuse, cross-contamination, poor personal hygiene, and what? Poor cleaning and sanitizing. That is the problem. So, what is the solution? So, we need to focus on this measure, control the time and temperature, prevent cross-contamination, practice good personal hygiene, purchase food from approved sources, and then good cleaning and sanitizing. So, now, let's explain the solutions, what we need to do. Good personal hygiene. So, the first problem was what? Poor personal hygiene. The solution is what? Good personal hygiene. So, what is this good personal hygiene? What do we need to do? Okay? So, now, we said poor personal hygiene is what? The person handling the food, transferring germs to the food, right? So what is good personal hygiene then? Ensuring that we as food handlers, we take care of ourselves, that we don't transfer germs or pathogens into food. And there are some things we need to do. So when it comes to personal hygiene, it starts with, there are two parts of personal hygiene, appearance and behavior. So let's talk about the appearance. But before I talk about it, let's look at this picture. In its beard net, is wearing gloves to prepare food. His clothes is clean. Is wearing an apron. Now, when we talk about food handlers, I said behavior and appearance, right? Let's talk about the behavior. So, food handlers contaminate food when we are sick, when we have injuries, cuts, maybe from knife, when we have wounds. What happens? Body fluids leak out, and that can contaminate food, right? When we sneeze or cough, like we said earlier, when we have contact with a sick person, when we touch things that are contaminated, and when we have symptoms of diarrhea. That is how we can get the food contaminated. So now when it comes to behaviors, so these are some of the actions and behaviors that can contaminate food, right? One is scratching the scalp in the kitchen or on the line. It's not appropriate. Running fingers through the hair, wiping or touching the nose, rubbing the ears, picking at your pimple or just picking at your face, that is wrong. Wearing dirty uniforms, coughing or sneezing into the hand, and then spitting in the operation, whether spitting into the sink or the gutter outside the kitchen, or spitting in the kitchen and around the kitchen is a no-no. Okay? So, those are the issues. Okay? So now, one of the first things we should learn to do as food handlers is one, hand washing. Very, very, very important. I'm sure we've heard about hand washing a lot. Abi? Yes. Okay. I have a question. When you want to wash your hands, what do you put first? Is it water or soap? Soap. Why? Everybody says soap? Yes. Why?
Serve as disinfectant.
Disinfectant, water? No.
I need soap.
The soap? What you put first is water before the soap. Reason is, let me paint a scenario. When you put soap on your hands and you try to rub it, what happens? Just imagine it. I'm sure we've all done it before. You put soap on your hand, whether liquid soap or bar soap, what happens? Friction. And then what happens? It forms like scuds. You see all those white lines. When you now put water, you'll have to rub hard to get it off. Am I right? And if you're not careful, you'll not be able to get all the soap off of your hands. Right? You add water first. The reason is when you add water, you have like lubrication. So that when you add the soap, imagine it, you wash your hands first, then you put soap, what happens? It glides to be slippery, smooth, and you can wash properly. In fact, when you put soap first, you are taking away the activity of the soap. When it forms those white streaks, the soap is already breaking down. So it's not doing anything again. Okay? So you put water first, and then you put soap, and then you wash. For how long? How long do you wash? The expo is there now. How long? What do I have there? Minimum 10-15 seconds, but NAFDAC is saying 20 seconds. So let's say 20 seconds. And they say that you wash the length of time it takes for you to sing happy birthday to yourself. So if I want to wash my hands, I put my hands under the tap, and then I put soap, and then I start to sing happy birthday to me, happy birthday to me, happy birthday, happy birthday. Somebody should have been timing. Towel in the food industry, towel or napkin to dry. In fact, it's better for you to leave your hand wet than using towel. Why? Cross-contamination. The same towel is hanging there. You wash, you dry. What have you done? You have just packed everybody's bacteria onto the next. The next person will wash. Use the same, pack everything and go again. No. We don't use towel in the food industry or napkin. What we use is, you can use the hand dryer. Even the hand dryer now safe is becoming obsolete. WHO has said no more hand dryer, but it has not gotten to Nigeria yet. So we are still saying, okay, use hand dryer. So serviette. But when we say serviette, we say paper towel, not serviette or tissue. So meaning kitchen roll. The reason, because that one, when you use it to wipe your hands, it wipes. But when you use serviette or tissue, what happens? Thank you. White particles on your hands. Okay? So it is one-time use towel. So the kitchen towel or the kitchen paper, that's what we use to dry our hands. And then that kitchen towel that you use to dry your hands, you use it to close the tap. And then put it in the trash. Why do we say you use that towel to close the tap? If your tap is not hand-free, right now WHO is saying that all taps in food establishments should be either leg-operated or hands-free, meaning those ones that once you just stand, the water would start flowing. The reason is because, I like to use this example. Imagine a mechanic went to wash his hands in the bathroom. That's finished servicing your car. He used that same oily hand to open the tap. He washed, right? He sang happy birthday to him. In fact, he did a good job of washing, right? He used paper towel to dry his hands, and then he now closed the tap. You realize that what will happen? The oil is back. You see the black oil. In the same way, you have washed your hands. Your hand is now clean. But don't forget, it is that dirty hand. No microbiological hazards. You cannot see it. So that same hand that you have taken the pains to wash, you just wasted the water and the soap. You now use the same hand, the clean hands, to close the tap. What has happened? Cross-contamination. It means that you have just packed everything back. Okay? So we need to take note of that when washing our hands. So moving on, and then if you want to take it one step further, if possible, if your doors are not swing doors, your kitchen doors, if they are not swing doors, ideally kitchen doors should be swing, such that you can use your shoulder to push, With a little pressure, it would open. But if your door is handle door, that is another point of cross-contamination. So you use tissue or something to open the door. That is why most kitchen doors are what? Swing doors. So there is no handle where everybody is touching, cross-contamination. Okay? So now, there are some specific times we need to make sure we wash our hands. The first one is when we take out garbage, meaning you take out the trash. Maybe your bin is full, you tie it up, you take it out. If you are coming back to the kitchen, you must wash your hands. When you clear tables or bus tables for our waiters, after clearing and bussing tables, they have to wash their hands. Or at a minimum, use hand sanitizer. Okay? And then, after touching your clothes or changing your clothes, after handling money, I always stress this one, after handling money, the money you have in your hands this morning, a few hours ago, could have been in Lagos. Yes. The way money moves is amazing. And people store money in different places. Some people put money under their underwear. Some people put it under the pillow. Some people put it under the bed. Some people even bury it. People handle money in different ways. So money is a huge source of contamination. So when you handle money in the kitchen, that is why we say when you are resuming work in the morning, maybe you went by public transport or whatever the case may be, when you are resuming, you must wash your hands before entering into the kitchen. Okay? So when you leave and return to the kitchen, maybe when you go on break, you go for lunch, when you are coming back to the kitchen, you have to wash your hands. When you touch live animals, maybe you go and receive, when you touch any animal, right, or proteins, you have to wash your hands. And then if you know you touch anything that can contaminate your hands, you have to wash. When you sneeze also, right? Now, I'll talk about the proper way for sneezing. Now, we can't say you should not sneeze, because sneezing is a reflex action, right? Meaning the sneeze will not tell you, I'm coming, oh, get ready before you sneeze. What happens, especially in the kitchen, maybe from pepper or whatever, you would have the urge to sneeze and then you sneeze immediately. Onions, thank you. So, who knows the proper way to sneeze? Do you want to show us? Thank you. Please do not sneeze into your hands. Remember that picture we saw in the beginning where the person was coughing? Same thing when you need to cough. You cough and sneeze into your elbow. Okay? So please let us take note of that. And then use of hand sanitizers. We have to use hand sanitizers where appropriate. Now, I don't think this needs telling. Abi? We know what is right and what is wrong.
Yes.
But just in case we don't know. Your fingernails must be short and must be clean. No artificial nails in the kitchen. When we're talking about physical hazard earlier, somebody mentioned nail. Yeah. Right? So that is the standard for a kitchen staff and for a service staff, in fact. That is the standard, including this white transparent one, that shiny one. Thank you, nail hardener. It is not allowed. Okay? So no false nails, no nail polish. Remember, we are talking about we talked about poor personal hygiene. That is the problem. What is the solution? I said appearance and behavior. We talk about behavior, no spitting, proper way to sneeze, right? Okay. Okay, now, infected wounds. Also, we said part of the problem in personal hygiene is when we have wounds and cuts. Because of body fluids, we can contaminate food. So what do we do? All those things are inevitable, right? So what do we do? When we have infected wounds, what we need to do is you clean the wound. I'm sure we have a first aid box here. And we have trained first aiders. Great. You clean the wound, you apply plaster, and then you wear gloves on it. That is the proper thing to do. You clean the wound, apply plaster, and wear gloves on it. Now, for the food industry, I don't know if that is what we have here. For the food industry, the standard plaster is blue waterproof plaster. Is that what we use here? We use regular plaster. The reason, let me tell you the reason. So maybe next time when you're procuring, you can make recommendations and say, okay, yes, we want the blue waterproof plaster. The reason is there is no food in the world that is blue. So the blue plaster is made specifically for the food industry. There is no food. Aside from maybe in bakery section, icing sugar, they put food coloring. There is no food in the world. So imagine physical hazards. If it falls into your jollof rice, you will see it, or your stew. But imagine the brown regular plaster that you have. If it's in jollof rice, you might not see it until the customer is, right? In fact, if it is in soup, the customer will not even see it, maybe until I swallow something. Right? So please, let us take note of that. And then gloves. How to use gloves. Okay? You must wear appropriate gloves. You do not blow into gloves, please. Before you wear your gloves, it is wrong to blow into it. Can anybody guess why?
Yes. Bacteria from the mouth.
Thank you, from the mouth. That's why you don't blow into your gloves. To change it. Take it off and put it in the trash, please. We do not, they are called single-use gloves. It is not multiple use. So you change it. If you are, when you finish what you are doing, let's say for example, you are chopping vegetables and you want to, chef has assigned you to do something else, you change the gloves. Maybe you want to go and clean chicken or butcher, whatever the case may be, you change the gloves. Now, the only rule for, there's a rule for use of gloves. Now, I know that, so NAFDAC mandates that in the kitchen we must always wear gloves. But I always say this, the only rule to glove uses, the only place you cannot but wear gloves is when you are handling ready to eat. What do I mean? Now, in some cases, maybe you want to clean chicken, it might not be convenient to wear gloves, or you have to walk under the tap or something. It might not be convenient to wear gloves. I say that is fine. However, if you are handling ready to eat, you must wear gloves or use tongs or whatever. What do I mean by ready to eat? Like the word says, ready to eat. It means that that food is not going through any other form of processing before you serve it to the customer. It is not going in the oven. It is not going to be warmed. It will not be fried. It has become ready to eat. Meaning, so when your Chinese rice, your Mexican rice, whatever the case is done, it has become ready to eat. Now your pastry, all pastries, the moment it comes out of the oven, what has it become? Ready to eat. Now, salad, what is salad? Ready to eat, because you don't cook it. So when you are chopping it, understand that this thing is ready to eat. You will not cook it, you will not warm it, you will not fry it. So those that prep salad must always wear gloves. So I say we can excuse, what I'm saying is we can excuse not wearing gloves in any other thing that you do. But when you are handling ready to eat, you must wear gloves. Is that clear? Okay. If your chef and your company policy is none at all, it means it is none at all. It is not by force to work here. If you know you must wear your wedding ring, you must. It is fine. So it is your choice. But we have a zero jury policy. Okay? Now let's look at this scenario. Is hand washing required? Yes or no? Look at the picture. It seems to be coming from somewhere. Abi? Yeah. Where is it coming from? Restroom. Is hand washing required? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. All right. Wash hands after using the restroom. Is hand washing required? Yes or no? Yes. Why? Thank you. She's using the gloves she's using to wash. Now, they said hand washing, not glove washing. Abi? Okay, so she has to remove the gloves and wash her hands. If need be, she can wear another gloves. Abi? Okay. Wash hands after touching your face, your hair, or your body. Now, is hand washing required, yes or no?
Yes.
Why? Touching, thank you, raw. I said anytime you handle proteins or anything with blood, you have to wash your hands. Okay? Is hand washing required, yes or no?
Yes.
Why? She's touching her body. Abuse causes the food to become unsafe. So that means you don't abuse time and temperature. You control your time and temperature. Now, let me explain why time and temperature control is very, very important. If you look at that picture, right, we all know what a thermometer is, Abby? Yes. Good. A thermometer is what we use to measure temperature. And it is usually from what? 0 to 100. Yes. Now, at what temperature does water boil? 100. Good. So, and at what temperature does water freeze?
-4 degrees.
0. Water begins to freeze at 0. There's nothing like -0. Water begins to freeze. So when water gets to 0, you start seeing ice crystals, like small ice inside it. And then when it starts to drop, those crystals start to come together till when it gets to like -5, then you have block.
Yes.
Okay? So now, I said that to say this. Microbiological hazards, specifically bacteria, which is what causes foodborne illnesses most of the time. Now, they have an activity level. There's something we call the temperature danger zone. Temperature danger zone. Permit me to come to this side. They are living their best life. So that is why we refer to it as a danger zone. So anything below 5 is called the cold zone. And then below that, freezing zone. Now if you look at this, my picture critically, when something is frozen in the freezer, what is happening to the bacteria? They start what?
They are frozen.
They are sleeping, inactive. Meaning, when your food is in the freezer, it doesn't mean it is safe. Microbes are just inactive. They are sleeping and waiting for when you bring them out of the freezer. Okay? So, now, when your food comes out of the freezer and you start to defrost or you thaw it, it means the temperature is going up. When it reaches 0, what is the guy doing? All right. Okay, we are getting there. Now, once he hits 5 degrees, what happens? They multiply. They are living their best life. You can see, now, it takes 20 seconds for one cell of bacteria to become 2. That's bacterium. For one cell. Now, and bacteria live in colonies, meaning they are never single. They live in multiples. They are a colonial organism. But I'm trying to paint a picture. Just one. It takes one. Just 20 minutes to become 2. In another 20 minutes, actually. In another 20 minutes, the 2 becomes what? 4. In another 20 minutes, the 4 becomes what? 16. Right? So, and the thing with bacteria is they are asexual, meaning they don't need a man. Just that one cell of bacteria is enough to procreate. I'm saying all this so you can start to imagine. Yes, it is. We cannot see them, but we need to understand how they act and how they live, so that when we are handling food, you understand the importance of what you're doing and the consequences of what you do. So, when the temperature hits 5, they multiply rapidly. And then from that 5 to 60, They are multiplying. But when the temperature hits 60, what happens? They start to sweat. It starts getting uncomfortable. And then the moment it's going above 60, between that 60 to 100, what do we see there? Rest in peace. So, the only thing that kills bacteria is heat above 60 degrees. Now, the danger zone is between 5 and 60. Now, what is room temperature? Do we know, like normal temperature?
37 degrees.
No, that's no. 37 is no.
Room temperature.
Room temperature. 37, 36 is 34, 35 is body temperature. In fact, during COVID, when you check you and eat 37, they put you in a special corner. Abi? No. 37 is hot. Your body is hot at 37. So.
16.
Degrees Celsius.
All the ACs here, none has temperature gauge.
24.
Okay. So room temperature, normal room temperature is between 24 to 30, depending on what the weather is like. So on cold days, especially in the mornings, the temperature can be 20, 21. Now, in the afternoon, depending, so like in Jos is cooler than in Lagos. In Lagos in the afternoon, temperature could get to 28, 29 in the afternoons when the sun is at the hottest. But for here, maybe 25, 24, 25. Now, thank you. Now, all these temperatures I mentioned, where does it fall?
On the bacteria.
5 to 60. That is why we do not leave our food unattended. You don't leave your food on the table. You are either freezing it, meaning freezer, chilling it, fridge, or cooking it is on fire. Now, so that is temperature control. So when we put food in the freezer, what are we doing? We are controlling the temperature. When we put it in the fridge or in the chiller, we are controlling temperature. Why? So that bacteria does not multiply. Now, on the other side is time. I mentioned earlier that one cell of bacteria takes 20 minutes to multiply. So, if you want to use time control, let's say for whatever reason, you need to put your food outside. It needs to be on the table. The maximum time. So there's something we call the 2-4 hour rule. Meaning, whatever you want to do. But once food has been outside for 4 hours at the danger zone, that food is gone. What do I mean by that food is gone? It will not smell bad, right? It will not taste sour. The reason why we say it has gone bad is the bacterial load at that time is not safe for human consumption. Now, I know it's possible for us to do it and get away with it. But what we do at home, it's possible you leave your stew on the gas in the morning and then you come back home in the evening, you just put it on rice and eat without even 1 minute. Now, that is a bad practice. But what I'm saying is this. If you choose to do that in your house, that is fine. But in a commercial kitchen, it is not allowed. What do I mean by a commercial kitchen? A place where people come to pay for food. It is against the law, subject to imprisonment. Yes. Because somebody cannot use his money to buy problem. You understand what I'm trying to say? Yes. Okay, so that is what we mean by time and temperature control. So now, having that understanding, control the time and temperature of food. Do not let food stay too long at temperatures that are good for pathogen growth. And we know the temperature that is good for pathogen growth is what? Between 5 to 60, which is normal room temperature. So now let's talk about foods that are likely to go bad quickly. So we call them TCS foods, foods that you must control time and temperature with them. You do not leave them out. Your milk and anything made from milk, cheese, and all of that. Your eggs, raw meat, chicken, fish, seafoods, all the shelled seafoods, cooked vegetables. When you steam your potatoes, any fruit and vegetable that has been steamed or cooked is a TCS food. Then you have your grains, meaning your rice. Once you cook rice, if it is not being served immediately, you must put it in the chiller. Now, when I say put it in the chiller, not for 4 or 5 days. Fruits and vegetables. So once fruits and vegetables, once you chop or slice them, they become TCS foods. If your tomato is still whole, you can leave it on your table. If your cabbage is still whole, it can be on the table. Your carrot, everything. The moment you put a knife to it, because what happens when you cut fruits and vegetables? The juices are released, right? So imagine it that way, and you are encouraging bacterial activity. So once you cut your fruits and vegetables, if you are not ready to use it, it must go in the chiller. That is why your salads must be in the chiller. If you are doing a buffet service, your salad must be in an ice bin. Do we use a bain-marie for our buffet service? You don't have chafing dishes, lighted.
Yes.
No, for vegetable, don't light it.
No, but for other food, lighted. It keeps food hot.
Yeah.
So the only problem we have now is the salad.
We then keep food safe. Now, we are talking about time and temperature control, Abi. So, storage is part of time control. Storage, how we store our food. So, there is the first in, first out method, and there is the first expired, first out method. So yesterday I had mentioned that first in, first out is a bit obsolete. So that this does not apply only to the store, even in the kitchen, because we get things from store to use in the kitchen, and then we store temporarily before we use, right? We always have to ensure that we use the rotation method, first expired, first out. What do I mean by that? I'll use the same example I used yesterday. Let's say you received bottled water today now, and the expiry of that bottled water is December 2024. The bottled water you received today, let's say you received 100 today, right? Tomorrow they brought another 100, and the expiry for the 100 you receive tomorrow is November 2024. Which one will you use first?
November 2024.
The November is what you should use. So the one they are bringing tomorrow is what you should use first, meaning first expired, first out. The one that would expire first is the one you should use first. You should push out first, regardless of when they brought it, regardless of when you received it. Okay? So it should be first expired, first out. So, which food needs time and temperature control? So there's flour and there's corned beef. From an unclean place to a clean place. Okay? So don't transfer pathogens from one food to another. Don't transfer from one surface to another. Now, how do we now ensure we don't cross-contaminate? One of the first things is using dedicated tools, utensils, and equipment. What do I mean by that? You don't use the same chopping board that you use to cut chicken. When you are done cutting your chicken, oh, I want to make salad. You carry your cabbage, put it on it, and cut. So that is why we have color coding. What do I mean by that? When it comes to the use of chopping board, you can color code such that everybody knows. When you see that particular chopping board, you know what it is used for. Red is for what? Red meat. White is for what? For those of us that don't know, we are taking notes. Green is for what? Vegetables, all your produce, green, anything. From the colors you can tell. What is the color of meat? Red. Color of blood, red. That is why you use a red chopping board. Then you have, so I said white is for what? Somebody says salad. Actually, white is for pastries. Primarily, white is for pastries. But you can choose to say your white here will be for salad. But everybody has to know that and know that, okay, here in our kitchen, we use white for salad. Okay? So what other color? Yellow, I think. Yes? Yellow is for what? What color do we use for chicken? Thank you. Yellow is for cooked food. What color for chicken?
Still red. And blue is for raw fish.
Okay.
Sorry, ma'am. When you say yellow is for cooked food, please can you...
So, let's say for example, you have steamed your chicken and you want to slice it. That is already cooked food. You want to slice it before plating it. You can use, so you don't use the one you use for raw. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. So yes, seafood is blue. What is the color of the sea? So meaning fish, anything that comes from water. Yes, that's what you use. So you have dedicated one. Now, that doesn't mean that if you don't have all these colors in your kitchen, you cannot segregate. You have bread, you have fish, you have chicken, and you have meat. I'll go over that again. You have eggs, you have bread, you have fish, you have chicken, and you have meat. And you want to store, you have a freezer or a chiller, a standing unit, and you want to store and arrange everything. How do you arrange? Which one will be at the top layer? Bread. Why?
It's lighter.
It's lighter? Do we agree?
No, it doesn't have water in it
that can drop. Okay, what will be the next one? Why?
No,
it doesn't have water. Okay, what will be the next one?
meat.
Why?
Meat. And followed by the chicken.
No, chicken.
Meat followed by chicken followed by fish. Is that what you're saying?
Chicken. No, fish.
Chicken first.
Chicken before the meat. Fish first.
Chicken before the meat.
Yes.
Why?
Last one.
All raw. Lighter or because it doesn't have water. This is the rule. You arrange them by the cooking time and temperature. So that means your ready to eat must always come first. Don't forget ready to eat, you are not cooking it. So that is why your bread will be at the topmost layer. Followed by your eggs, because if you consider the time and temperature, so of the egg, fish, chicken, and meat, which one will cook first? Egg. That is why your egg is next. So fish, chicken, meat, which one will cook faster of the three? Fish. Your fish is next. Chicken and meat, which one will cook faster? Chicken. Your chicken is next. So which one will be last? Meat. Just think of how long it takes to cook them. Because it means that is the length of time of bacterial activity. Am I making sense?
Yes.
So that is, you're ready to eat will always come first. So whatever, so once you understand that principle, any type of food, you know how to arrange it. Okay?
So the shorter time.
Yes. Up. So yes, preventing cross-contamination during storage. We can see the first picture. So this is in the chiller or cold room, whatever the case may be. That first scenario is wrong. Why? It's not covered. Okay? The second scenario is correct because you always have to cover your food in the chiller. You must cover it. Am I in your way?
No.
Okay. So preventing cross-contamination during storage. Use containers intended for food. What is wrong with that first picture? We don't want to see paint buckets in your chiller or your freezer, please. Containers intended for food. Okay? Now, same thing, that first picture. What is wrong? It is open, number one. Number two, the way it is stored, meat is above vegetables. It shouldn't be. Remember the rule. Okay? Vegetable, either you eat it raw, like salad, or you steam it. Vegetable does not take long to cook, Abi? Okay. So it should definitely be before any of your proteins. Always place ready to eat food above raw seafood, meat, and poultry. So you can see the first scenario is wrong and the second one is correct, because you have your vegetables, maybe sauteed vegetables up, and then this meats and other things down. Preventing cross-contamination during storage. What is wrong in that first picture? Thank you. Chemical, hand gloves, everything on top. Then bread, banana, strawberries under. Chemical should be stored very far away. So what is wrong with this? Is there anything wrong with it?
Yes.
What's wrong? Okay. One, it is an unsafe practice. It is not even safe, number one. In terms of health and safety, it is wrong. In terms of food safety, it is wrong. Right? So, how should we carry our glasses then? Yeah. That is how we should carry our glasses. A single glass, yes, you can hold it with your hands. But when you have to carry multiple glasses, you should have a carrier. Okay? Do not stack glasses when carrying them. Carry glasses in a rack or a tray. What is wrong with this? If there's anything wrong. Is there something wrong with it? Why? He's just trying to give the customer a fork now. Eh? Thank you. Where should you hold your fork? At the tip. Thank you. Okay, so that is the correct practice, please. Is there anything wrong with this? Yes. So what is cleaning and sanitizing? What is cleaning? Can anybody help? What is cleaning? Process of what? Oh, there's expo. Okay, so now cleaning is different from sanitizing. However, in the food industry, cleaning and sanitizing are conjoined twins. Meaning we always say clean and sanitize. They always go together. Because cleaning is the removal of dirt, while sanitizing is when you kill the bacteria. You remove, you kill, or you reduce the bacteria. That is what sanitizing is. You wanted to say something? Using different chopping boards, washing and cleaning, using your FEFO, covering items in the fridge, storing and stacking properly in the fridge. We spoke about what comes first, ready to eat, and all of that, yeah? So what was the third thing we discussed? The answers are there now. Time and temperature abuse. We know what time and temperature abuse is, right? Time and temperature abuse is leaving food at the danger zone. And what is that danger zone? 5 to 60. Okay, great. So how do we ensure that we don't abuse time or temperature? Yes, or very hot. If you are not ready to use an item, put it in your chiller or the freezer. Use your bain-marie or your chafing dishes. It has to be lighted, because when you light it, what are you doing? You are putting the temperature above the danger zone, right? So when it comes to that, there was something I forgot to talk about. Cooling and thawing or defrosting. Because remember, when your food is in the freezer, the microbes are inactive, Abi? They are asleep. But when you start to thaw, meaning you are defrosting, what are you doing? You are increasing it, so the temperature would. So how do we defrost here? Maybe that is the question I should ask first. How do we defrost? How do we thaw? So let's say you need to prep chicken, or you need to cook chicken today, and you receive it from the store. It's frozen solid. What do you do to use it for prep? You okay? Procedure for so because when you do that, right? Remember the temperature danger zone. You leave it at room temperature, so the chicken and whatever you are thawing sits in that bloody water, and they are just living. So you don't do that. So the way you thaw is, there are 4 standard methods of cooling, of thawing or defrosting. So the first one is you thaw in your chiller, if you have chillers. What that means is you bring out from the freezer, and you do that usually overnight, and that has to do with your menu planning to be able to do that. So whatever you need for today, for example, you'd have received it yesterday, you put it in your chiller in the fridge. So by the time you come in this morning, it is stored, and then you can use it. That is one method. Another method is using the microwave. So that is not very common because you can't use the microwave for large volumes, but it's allowed. You can use it for smaller volumes. Now, another method is you cook straight. From freezer, it goes on the fire. Straight, you cook it straight. Now, the challenge with that is seasoning might not enter, but there are some foods you might be able to do that with. But the most common and standard method is you thaw under running water, not in a bowl of water, meaning you put all the things you want to thaw in a bowl. Your chicken, you put it in a bowl, and then you put that bowl under tap water, running water that has a drain. So you can put it in the sink and then open the tap, such that the water, as it's thawing, the water is flushing. And what happens is heat transfer. It doesn't take too long to thaw, because the water will take out the coolness faster, and then the chicken or whatever will not sit in that blood water. And then, so that is how you thaw. Okay, so please, it is wrong to thaw in a bowl of water. We don't do that.